Cool, Logan. So yeah, really excited to have you here. So maybe if you want to start by telling the story of WhatNot. It seems like it's been a pretty incredible journey for you so far, and it's only been like 2 years. So maybe you can
Yeah.
go about into the history a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I think maybe first I'll tell you guys a little bit about my background, and then my co-founder's background, and I can kind of get to how Whatnot came about, and what we did to get it where it is today. So my background is in software engineering. As a kid, just really had a fascination with computers, and so I'm actually a self-taught programmer. I went to school in Montana at the University of Montana, so it's not the greatest college, but I really actually went there so I can ski. So I ski during the day and I would take classes at night. I actually didn't really care much about school at the time. But while I was there, I actually got my first internship slash full-time job at a startup. So like at that time, I didn't know really anything about startups. And so this particular startup based in Montana is probably the only startup in Montana. And it was a YC company. And so I was very fortunate to get an internship there, which led into a full-time job. And I was just like, my eyes were open. It was just like really fun to work at a startup and be able to get, my hands on everything and wear multiple hats. And so after school, I kind of just continued and ventured down the startup route. So I moved from Montana to New York City. And in New York City, I worked for a bunch of different startups. Most of them failed pretty terribly. So it was a really good learning experience because I could see like what these particular early stage startups did good and what they did wrong, especially to like achieve product market fit, because getting to product market fit is very hard to do. And so, yeah, the funny thing is that particular company in Montana is now like a 150 person company. So that's good for Montana. And so they did some things right. But most recently, I was actually a product manager at a company called Goat, which is a sneaker marketplace. And before that, I was the director of engineering at a company called Flight Club. And so both, being marketplaces gave me a lot of experience at, marketplaces and really learning like what they did as companies that, really took things off and what they did well. And so I learned a lot, which was great. And so I transitioned to product just because I really enjoy that side of things. I just wanted a different challenge. I wanted to do something new just because I did engineering for so long. My co-founder's name is Grant. He started a company at one point and also has worked for every like big tech company like Facebook, Google, and so his background is mainly in like marketing and business development. And so we've known each other for quite some time. We've worked on projects together. Like one time we built this bot that would get 50 to 100 pairs of Yeezys during a drop, and we would flip it for 3 times the cost. And so we worked on a lot of these like projects together on the side in New York City. And so just really had a good working relationship. But yeah, the WhatNot came about. We were in Japan on a trip and we wanted to do something. We knew we wanted to do something. And so like we're at a bar and we're just discussing ideas. And our initial idea was we wanted to create a localized marketplace where you could create like safety and trust. So if you think about like Craigslist or any Macari or whatever, when you're going on and you're meeting up with people, it's like kind of like it's not a very safe transaction. And so working with Goat, which really focused on like safety and authentication, we thought, well, like how could we apply a similar model locally? And so this was in January, 2.5 years ago. And so, so at that point, we knew we wanted to start a company. We thought we would call it Legit at that time. And the reason why we wanted to call it Legit, because we thought it was a cool name and it kind of matched, the whole thing around safety. We couldn't acquire the domain, unfortunately, because it was worth a lot of money. And we ended up calling ourselves Always Legit. So I was working at Goat at the time, and at nights, when I wasn't working, I'd use my personal computer and I started like coding up Always Legit. And we started doing a lot of market research as we were building Always Legit. And I wasn't working on it a lot, probably like 10 hours a week. And we just learned that the unit economics of that business was terrible. In order for us to actually like pull something off, we really had to, raise a lot of money and have a lot of density because the margins weren't there. And just like the cost of doing all that was just astronomical. So we knew if we were to actually go out and pitch investors, we've never, raised money in our past and aren't necessarily, and don't have like a track record of being, successful founders. So we thought we'd just have a really difficult time. And so we kind of pivoted our idea a little bit. And what we did was we started looking at eBay data. And we noticed that this particular category in eBay was exploding. And what it was Funko Pops. And so Funko Pops, I believe in December, or this is into 2019, it was one of like the hottest selling collectibles in eBay. And so we did a lot of research in that particular area. And we thought, like it would be really interesting to create a marketplace around collectibles. Collectibles is a massive industry. But how do we like actually go after the entire thing? Because we can't go after the entire thing at once. And so we came up with a hypothesis that if we could capture the Funko Pop community, more than likely there's going to be overlapping communities that we can quickly expand into. And so this would be like Pokemon cards, Magic cards, sports cards, you name it. And so, working at GOAT, sneakers, there's highly counterfeited, they're highly counterfeited. There's a lot of problems. And we felt like, we could use a little bit of GOAT's model and apply it to WhatNot, but kind of tweak it social, like in a little bit different way. I think like GOAT and StockX, those companies are really interesting because they really just focus on the transaction. But there's this whole other piece that, we thought was missing, which is really the community side. So we figured if we could really focus on community and safety and initially launch with Funko Pops, we could probably create something. So we both left our jobs. I built an app really quickly, and what it was literally just an app to buy and sell Funko Pops. And so when we initially launched in December 2019, it was actually, the app was where you could just buy the Funko Pops, you couldn't sell it. And so we bootstrapped our supply by scraping all of eBay's data and essentially creating a market price for every single Funko Pop. And then what we would do is we would create fake listings on our marketplace, and with that, we would add a markup, and if someone bought it, we would go to acquire it on eBay. We would inspect and verify it, and then sell it, and then ship it off to the seller, or sorry, not the seller, the buyer. January 2020 came around. We went through YC, and I think the app at that point had only been around for three weeks, and like within 3 weeks, I think we were probably doing maybe $5,000 a week in sales with no marketing or anything. So if something was working, we knew it. And so we just really doubled down on getting selling open and like building all the selling features. And so while we were in YC, we actually rented this house in Mountain View. There's this other developer I worked with. He was contracting for us at the time named Gustavo. And it was like him, Gustavo and my other co-founder all living in this like really shitty house. But we were working like nonstop. I would get up at 7 in the morning and I worked till 1 in the morning. And it was like literally every single day. And just really focused on the product. It was a fun experience, but I would never ever go back to that house again. Because you could hear everything. Gustavo snoring in the middle of the night, and it wasn't a great place to get a lot of sleep. But yeah, YC was a really interesting program. I think we were a little bit different in terms of how we approached YC while we were there. There's a lot of people there for like networking and just really depending on their type of business. We actually were there literally just to build our product and have very aggressive goals and not necessarily network, but learn from other people, like what they're doing and kind of hold ourselves accountable. And so, there's these things called dinners. I think we went to like 2 or 3 dinners while we were there. We didn't go the entire sort of things that we were supposed to do, mainly because we're just so focused on building our product and like, but anyways, so back to the feature set, we started building out the selling features. And by the time we actually had a full functioning way of people to be able to list listings and sell it on our marketplace, we had like a wait list of 3,000 people. So we cut the wait list, opened it up with the platform for people to sell. And, immediately we just started getting an influx of real listings for people, which was really cool to see. And so at that point, we had a real marketplace working where people were like buying these things and selling these things. And so we were actually eventually able to cut off eBay entirely. So March 2020, as you all know, is a very interesting time in the world with COVID. So things started kind of slowly shutting down. When you're at YC, everything amounts to this thing called Demo Day. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Demo Day. But like 2 days before we're supposed to go to this big conference center to do demo day, YC emails everyone and says you have to do one like a little slide on what your company is doing, and that's it. You don't pitch or anything. And so yeah, so we're like, oh, this is interesting, but it makes sense for safety reasons. But we were pretty confident we were going to raise a good amount of money, because by that point, our growth was like this. We were growing at least 100 or 200% month over month. I think, by the end of YC, we were doing like $60,000 in GMV a month. And I mean, that doesn't probably sound like a lot, but considering we were only around for 4 months, you could see like it was working. So we were pretty confident that we were going to raise some money. COVID hit, and so we decided to get out of that shitty Mountain View house and go rent a place in Arizona, mainly because it's cheaper and we can really just kind of focus on work, and not be distracted. And so we had like this really cool house that had a pool and all of that. And Grant was like taking investor calls, my other co-founder, and he took around 100 investor calls, and I'd say almost every single one said no, which was really interesting. We actually have this list of every investor we met with and like the reason why they said no. And there's a couple reasons. I think one, it was a really weird time to invest. But number two, people just didn't get the collectible space, and they didn't really get us as a Funko Pop app. Although we had ambitions of expanding into a lot of other categories and we knew we could do it, we just really wanted to capture that market. So we didn't really let fundraising distract us. Grant was doing all the investor calls. I was literally just like in my room coding all day. And during that, we just started building out more like the community side of WhatNot that we really wanted to do. So that was like profile photos, usernames, the ability to follow users, like listings. And the biggest thing we added was anyone could go live and like sell their item and through a low latency video and auction. And so like people could interactively bid on these items, or you can buy it for a particular price. And as soon as we actually launched that, it was kind of insane. We knew we hit something because Grant went live as like a beta test, and we invited some of our users. And like during that live, which was actually almost a year, it was a little over a year ago. We sold out of everything within like, a few minutes, and we're like, wow, this is interesting. We probably hit something pretty awesome. Let's continue to like double down and invest on that. So, I started just kind of patching the bugs that we learned. And then we started onboarding new people to actually use this live piece. And every single person that came on would sell things at a ridiculous rate, way overpriced. And we knew we hit something. So at that point, we're like, well, we should try to raise a seed round again, because clearly we have something that's working. And so we did raise a seed round. It took us a day to close. Like literally 3 calls, and every single person wanted to invest. And these were different people that we didn't talk to initially, because all those people that we initially talked to we'll never talk to again because they didn't believe in us. And so that was really interesting, because I think we closed a little over $4 million in a day, versus speaking to 100 investors over the course of a month and getting no. And so it was cool. And so with that money, we were planning on expanding the engineering team and really just kind of growing things and taking things to the next level. The biggest concern that the investors who did invest in us was like, can you actually expand into other categories? And so, with that money, we were like, let's just double down. Let's open up Pokemon. And so we slowly got Pokemon rolling on the app, and and that was it. It was just Pokemon and Funko Pops. And so December 2019 rolls around. And so this was, December 2020. So a year from when we actually launched, our growth just continued to skyrocket. And so as a result of that, we had every investor, VC firm we could think about reaching out to us, trying to preempt our Series A. We ended up closing a Series A with Andreessen Horowitz, mainly because of the partner's expertise in live stream commerce. We learned, and we didn't actually know this when we were building this, but like live stream shopping in China is a huge market. It actually accounts for over 50% of all e-commerce GMV. We had no idea. And so, Connie Chan, who invested in us at the time, she's on our board as well, really understood that market. And we felt like, she was a good person to work with, mainly because of her expertise and someone that we could definitely learn from. fast forward to today, yeah, a couple months ago, we announced that we raised a Series B. That was led by Y Combinator, this growth fund. We learned that we're one of the fastest growing marketplaces in the world. So we're actually growing faster than Airbnb and like Uber did. Not Uber China, by the way, but yeah, it's been a really interesting experience. We've expanded into a bunch of different categories. Our biggest category right now is actually sports cards, and just in that category alone, every week we're doing millions of dollars in GMV. And so every category that we've actually invested in and tried to spin up seems to work really well. And I think, you know, that kind of goes back to Grant and I's hypothesis that if we could really just capture one community, it's going to be really easy to get into other communities as well. Yeah, so since that, you know, like it's really interesting because at first it was all about product market fit. And when we felt like we had product market fit, the next phase was like this growth phase. So since then, it's really just been about, you know, really company building, expanding the team. We're now probably a little over 70 people, if you include some of our contractors. We'll go from 70 to probably 250 in the next year. We really care about quality over quantity. So definitely taking our time on the hiring process. And so it's just a really interesting time because before, you know, I spent my days building and now like building WhatNot in terms of the software. Now my days are like building the company and the team. So yeah, that's a little bit about the background. I'm happy to answer any questions about that. So
Awesome. I'm gonna ask one quick question, and our founders can ask whatever they want. It seems like you were able to get to product market fit pretty quickly. I mean, like a year is really not that long. That's actually really impressive. So what I'm curious about is what did your like product iteration feedback loops look like in terms of time? Like how long were you testing things out and then actually going back and saying, okay, we got to try something new, and then iterating on that?
Yeah, we were always trying something new. We knew that we wanted to test like really big bets, and we figured if we could continue to test big bets like live shopping, which took me about a month to build, something would stick. But in terms of our iterative feedback cycle, like, you know, we really listen to our users, and that's like the number one thing that we did. And I encourage you all, like, talk to your users all the time. Because that's like the best bit of feedback. And that's partially to how we learned about live shopping, because we were like talking to our users who are like, hey, I'm going on Instagram and I'm selling like Funko Pops and it's a terrible experience. I'm like, oh, how are you using Instagram? Well, it's like the live video and there's a 20-second latency and I have to go back and forth on collecting payment. And I was like, oh, wow. And so we started looking at these Instagram lives and it was a massive thing. And so we're like, well, how do we make something better and more seamless? Because our users are currently doing this. But yeah, I think our approach to things were build things really fast and test it out and then continue and build something else and do it as quickly as you can. But yeah.
Awesome, cool. So anybody who has questions, feel free to jump in and go ahead and ask.
I'm also happy to give any advice on fundraising or any of that.
I have a question. So first of all, Logan, nice to meet you. I'm actually working on a startup myself with the team. And it's funny you mentioned fundraising because I was about to ask a question about that.
Mm-hmm.
So regarding, you know, getting into YC, like, what do you think like beyond your product, like, what do you think was one of the biggest factors in actually getting accepted to Y Combinator?
Yeah, so, you know, they get a lot of applications and, you know, everyone's is encouraged to apply. I think, you know, from what I know, it really boils down to two things. One is the team. And I think actually that's the most important thing. So what they're going to look at in your application is like, does this person have the experience to pull off what they want to pull off, right? And so if you have a really good founding team, that's a good, strong case to potentially get in YC. And then the second thing is obviously the idea. I think, you know, the idea is not as critical as the team. So if you can really demonstrate as a team that you guys are awesome and that you can probably pull something off or even build something really quickly and show that you did it and you have some traction, more than likely you'll get that interview. And I would encourage everyone to keep applying too. because the partners, they go through a lot of applications and they look at your application really quickly. So it's also like, can you communicate your idea and why you guys are the people to pull off that idea in that application? Because more than likely, the group partners who are reading your application are going to spend 30 seconds on it.
Gotcha. And WhatNot seems to be a consumer product. So like how many active users did you have when you got accepted?
We actually didn't launch. We're one of the few people who actually didn't launch and got in. So here's what happened is we did the application, we got approved to go in person for an interview. And when we got approved to go in person for an interview, we were determined to launch before that interview. And so we actually launched, I didn't tell you guys this, like we did launch in the App Store in December 2019, but we launched like a little website where you can buy these Funko Pops. And so, so by then we actually launched, and it was just a website, and we spent a lot of money to try to get like some initial sales. So in our interview, we could be like, we actually got some sales. I learned why they accepted us. I think it was mainly because of, Grant and I's experience and just like really having an understanding of marketplaces. And I think, depending on who you get, they may or may not get your idea, but it really, really boils down to the founding team.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much.
Yep. Cool. Anything else?
I have a question. Yeah, so my question was, how do you actually convince investors or other change perspectives? Because not everybody gets like collecting cards or those kinds of markets. So similar with us, similar with the industry I'm in, into a architecture and construction industry, and usually VCs are very tech focused,
right.
And they don't really get how big the architecture and construction industry is going to be. And similar thing with yours, like a collectible market. So what was the main thing? Like, how did you change perspectives when you were actually trying to tell the VC what your idea was?
Right. Like a VC is only going to invest in you depending on how big the market size is. So if you can really convince that your market opportunity in the market size is absolutely massive, then you probably have a good argument, but you have to kind of clearly demonstrate that and show, specific points around that. Us in the collectible space, I'd say that generally our growth was really good. And so that was a good indicator for people to invest, but it also kind of tied into like, look how big this is as an opportunity. If we could disrupt, eBay as a business and only take collectibles as a market, it's massive. And so you really got to speak to the size of the market, because they're only going to invest in companies that can be, multi-billion-dollar valuations eventually. They're not going to invest in something that is going to be a market size of $100 million, and that's just it. So you have to kind of really think about how big can you take that thing and convince them that you can actually take it to that level.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, so Logan, congrats on the success, by the way. Curious to hear what your vision is for longer term stuff here. Is the goal to transform kind of the US e-commerce marketplace more into what China's look like, and just build a social infrastructure around everything people are buying online, or what do you see this as?
Yeah. So I see us as a marketplace, and really just providing the tools to sellers and buyers to create the best experience, but really with an emphasis on community. And so the way, obviously we're only like, 10 or 11 categories right now. I think by the end of this year, we'll be in a bunch more categories, but I think that outside of collectibles, I really see this in a way where we focus on enthusiasts. So if you think about enthusiasts, I really like cooking, I like to ski, and I like Funko Pops. And so around that, I can be connected within my community and kind of meet different people, share information around products. Like if I'm going to go skiing next year, maybe I can go on a stream and talk to someone who's actually used it, or someone can talk about it and answer my questions about these new set of skis and why I should buy them for next year. So I really see this as a place where we can connect the community, and through that, friendships can be created, which actually multiple friendships and relationships have been created on WhatNot, which is kind of crazy. But really doubling down on the community side, if that makes sense.
All right, what's your favorite place to skate?
Well, I love Montana Snowbowl because that's where I would ski all the time in Montana. But yeah, I would say that's my favorite place.
How about if you get to go out of state, somewhere else, then we'll do second.
I like Winter Park and Mary Jane, more particular Mary Jane, which is next to Winter Park.
Where's that at?
It's right next to Winter Park.
Okay.
It's for skiers only. So
There's a few left.
So I want to ask, I know you raised a ton of rounds very quick in a very short time period. How did you guys come up with the valuation on those rounds? And was there any back and forth on that? Like, did you come up with it? Did they come up with it? Was there a negotiation there, or how did that look like?
Yes. So we were in a fortunate spot where we had multiple people trying to preempt each round that we've had. So Series A, Series B, we actually didn't even have a pitch deck. And so as a result of that, did we pick the valuation? We could have probably picked a higher valuation. And I think you got to be really careful with valuations because, you know, when you raise your next round, it's going to be harder and harder the higher the valuation you get. I guess it's already public, but like our recent valuation was $500 million. And people are now trying to preempt our Series C for multiples of that. And so I think you need to be careful with fundraising, especially if you're in the position of us. Like, obviously you don't want to dilute yourselves. And so if you are going to fundraise, you got to really think about like how much dilution are you willing to take? Is it advantageous to you to potentially bring on someone? Like if you're going to do your A and B, you're going to have to bring on a board member. And so maybe if you're in that right position, you can negotiate specific things like, hey, you know, you want extra voting rights or something like that, that really gives you founder control. But I think people really mess up in those early stage of funding by either like raising too much money, raising at a very high valuation, which I don't think you should do. I think you should raise at the right valuation. So there's a firm who's trying to win you over with valuations. It's probably not the right move because you're going to have a hard time if you can't prove yourself. And yeah, it also really goes down to like the partner and who you really want to work with. So put valuations aside, like, is this someone that you can work with because you're going to be meeting with them on a weekly basis? They're going to be in your board meetings on a quarterly basis. And so you really have to have that trust. And the good thing is we have very good board members. Like they stay out of our business. They let us do what we want to do. And it took a while of us interviewing a lot of people who wanted to you know, lead our Series A and B to do that. Both rounds actually kind of came unintentional. We were planning on doing a proper fundraise, and every time we say we're planning on doing a proper fundraise, we just, I don't know, we get a bunch of people who send us term sheets, and then it's like, we might as well just do it now and not be distracted so we can focus on building. And that's the thing, like investors can be really distracting and you really just need to focus on building.
Can you speak to how important it was to build narrow and deep communities instead of kind of these shallow and wide communities? And then also, can you go over some of the things that you guys did for speaking to the users, maybe some of the processes and exactly how you guys did it?
Yeah. So on going the vertical approach versus the horizontal approach, you can look at a lot of marketplaces and successful marketplaces in history, like eBay, for instance, went the vertical approach and now they're completely horizontal. And so you really have to build density and liquidity in something. And so if you're very like horizontally focused, it's going to be really hard for you to get one of those particular things going. And so you really just need to be, so here's one thing that actually almost happened. And I'm so glad we didn't do it. So when we got accepted to YC, we had a call with one of our group partners. His name is Adam Goldstein. He founded the company Hitmonk. And we were like, you know what? We should also launch into Pokemon at the same time. And he's like, no, do not do that. Just focus on Funko Pops. And we were literally about to light up Pokemon the next day. And I think that actually, if we did do that, it would have been a big distraction. And so I think, you know, when you're building your business, you really just kind of have to narrowly focus on one thing, build liquidity and density, especially if it's a marketplace. And then once you have that and you do have the time to go outside, then you should do it.
And then a little bit on speaking to users, how you guys did it, and then how you guys implemented that feedback. Because I think a lot of people, they hear feedback and they just implement everything, but they need to understand, it's an art, not a science. It's kind of, take what you hear.
It's definitely an art, not a science. I think the good thing about Grant and I is we have really good, strong product intuition. And so, someone will ask for something very small, but I think the way we would take in user feedback is looking at everything and seeing what is going to be the most impactful thing. And when you're building a business, you should have 1 or 2 KPIs that you track on a weekly basis. With marketplaces, the 2 KPIs that we track on a weekly basis is GMV and order count. And so if any of those things, could really substantially affect those 2 KPIs, it's probably worth working, right? And so if someone is asking for something that's not going to make a material impact, you probably shouldn't do it. There's a lot of requests we get like that of things that really don't matter because it's really specific to that one user. But if you can really create something that is substantial, that really correlate to both of your KPIs that you have in your business, and more than likely it works and every user is going to love it, right? Because if your GMV is growing and order count is growing, then great. How we went about talking to users. So we made it a requirement in the early days. We have a Discord channel now, which is this whole thing. But we made it a requirement where everyone in the company had to reach out to one user every week and talk to them. The first person I actually ever reached out to is now an employee at WhatNot, which is kind of funny and ironic. He's our community manager of toys, but it was just really good to get his insight and his perspective and learn a lot. We knew a little bit about the market. We had a few Funko Pops, but we weren't like avid collectors, and we just saw the market opportunity, and literally it was something that we felt like we could create a compelling business on. But yeah, I would say that's the most important thing. You got to talk to your users regardless. But don't take everything and say yes, say that's a really good idea, and move on to the next one, right? So yeah.
So you suggested them to hop on a Discord channel, or did you?
Oh, so right now we have a Discord channel and a bunch of our users.
Just directly call them or email them, or did they kind of inbound reach out to you?
I would directly call them or email them. So I would look through our database and I would look for different things and the data. So I'd oh, this person was using our app for a month and then stopped using it. Why? This person is selling a shitload of stuff. Let's go talk. I want to go talk to him and see what he really likes and what he dislikes. This person was selling and is no longer selling. And so I would just look at our data and I would just pick interesting user trends and then pick some person and then I'd email them.
Perfect. Amazing.
Awesome. I see Jason had his hand raised. Jason, do you want to ask a question?
Yes. Because I'm from China, so I'm particularly feel the resonance of how your live shopping attracts such success. So what because we are building this kind of smart shopping system that eventually want to shape it into a kind of fashion community where people share their comments and ideas and their reviews on different things. So I just want to ask you, how did you get the first few of the most the sellers that attracts the most the flow of the, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, how do we get our initial users and how do we keep people going on? So we built a couple kind of things in our product initially that really encourage people to download the app. And if you look at the Funko Pop community and go on different Instagrams of people, there's always these giveaways. And so one thing that we did that was really interesting was we created a weekly drop. And so it was a weekly high-end giveaway for our particular Grail. A Grail is a Funko Pop that costs at least a couple $100. And the way that you can enter it is you can get a ticket or whatever, a raffle ticket for every entry. And the way that you create entries is a few different ways. One is by sharing it through social media. So it would generate like a little link, and you would say, hey, like, go enter my code on social media, and then people would go enter their code, and if they entered their code, they would also get a point, and then the other person would get a point. And then we also had like codes that people could just share, and every time someone entered it, they would get a point. And it's kind of funny, as a result of that, people would create like these Facebook groups just for sharing codes, and there would be like hundreds and hundreds of people in those groups. But through that is actually how we were able to grow our user base. And then number two was influencer partnerships. So just really partnering with specific people that were known in the community that could talk about us. That was actually really tricky to do, because initially no one knew who we were, and they're like, this app just appeared overnight, like, why should I trust it? And so like, once you can gain the trust of the community, it's pretty easy to grow the user base, but there's definitely some like growth hacks you can do. And I would try to like, I would try to, make them unique, but make it in a way where you're encouraging people to share and spread the word for free, because it's really free marketing. We never, like, that was our only marketing cost, was a weekly drop. And that was it. We weren't doing Facebook ads or any of that stuff.
That's very smart. So I would particularly want to ask about the partnership part. So how did you get, the initial, like the influential, celebrities in this community?
So, when we first started, we actually went for people who weren't super influential. We looked for people who are kind of like up and coming YouTubers, or someone who is really popular on Instagram. And the way that we initially did it was, one, we would send them things through the mail, and they would like unbox it, and then we would try to get in contact with them. And I mean, like, we would say, hey, we want to sponsor your videos and we'll pay you X amount of dollars. And so once you can get like those smaller people, it's easier to get people who are, I would say, higher, because you're going to gain more trust in the community. The people who are more influential, like, they're not going to stake their name on someone that, they have no idea on, even if you pay them, because it looks really bad for them. So I think like really targeting the smaller influencers and like working your way up.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
How did you decide on your first community to go after? What was the process of testing different communities out like?
So we looked at TerraPeak data, which is, it scrapes all of eBay's data, and we were just looking for interesting trends. And in TerraPeak, we noticed that Funko Pops was a huge trend in collectibles for eBay, and like the amount of volume people were doing in terms of buying and selling these things were substantial. And so from there, we kind of just like did more investigation. We actually like joined a bunch of forums, Facebook groups, really learned and tried to understand the market. And we learned that like, this is a really interesting community that is fragmented. Like, they're using all these different things, from eBay to Macari to Facebook groups to Instagram, and nothing really unifies that. And so there we were like, well, clearly there's an opportunity there. But yeah, we just looked at data.
I see you have your hand raised, Justin.
Yeah, so I actually have a couple just like smaller questions about development, I guess. Logan, you are the CTO, right?
Yeah.
So did you work on the app development?
Yeah, I built the entire app. Well, initially, okay. I mean, now a lot of it isn't built by me, but yeah, I mean, so when we first launched, it was just me and a friend that I used to work with. He was contracting for us in Brazil. And between him and I, we would just build most of it. Like, my days were literally coding from 7 in the morning to 1 in the morning every day. Even after YC, my days now are, I haven't written a line of code in maybe a month or a couple months, just because I can't. So I'm like, really right now I'm building that. I was building that, and now I'm building like the team, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. So I see that it's cross-platform. Did you guys start with cross-platform? And if you did, like what stack what technology did you use for the cross-platform app?
Yeah, so our philosophy for building is get it done as quickly as possible. So we would never over engineer anything, and we would always use a tool to get us to the next thing. And so even today, we're like a buy versus build company, because there's no point in building it if you can just buy it. And that way you can really focus on the product and things that matter. Our stack was, yeah, I mean, our stack was, we purposely didn't build a service driven oriented architecture, even though that would be really fucking fun because of the amount of time it would have taken to set that all up. We purposely didn't have everything on AWS, even though I knew how to fucking put everything on AWS because of time. And we weren't a huge app at the time that didn't need to scale. And so it was like, cool, let's spin up a Heroku server, right? So versus like spend the time on creating a really good pipeline to deploy to Amazon and a Kubernetes cluster, right? Which is what we do now. But so we were always like figuring out what is going to be the tool to get the job done as quickly as possible. So if I could actually spin up a web server on Heroku in 5 minutes, we should do that. Because when things do start to break, that's a great problem. And that's a problem that you can actually fix because shit's breaking. And you're probably at that point going to have the money to be able to do that. And so, yeah, I mean, our philosophy was just build as quickly as possible. I'm not going to lie, like we have a bunch of technical debt today. And do I regret any of the decisions that we made? No, absolutely not. And, you know, we're suffering the consequences as a result of building really fast and not really thinking about like what is going to be the most scalable thing, but it's like a really good position to be in. And so, yeah, I would just say find the tool that's going to make you be able to work as quickly as possible. And then on the mobile side, it was just React Native. I actually never built a mobile app in my life before, but like I knew React, so I'm like React Native is probably going to be easy. Took me a day to learn, and then that was that.
Gotcha.
Now we're actually going fully native. Our new app will launch in a couple weeks, and so it's like fully native iOS and native Android. There's some reasons for that, but yeah, that's, I mean, like I think React Native, if you're building a mobile app or Flutter, like just do that. You don't need to go fully native.
Yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, thank you.
Blake, I see you have a question. Oh,
Yeah, I wanted to ask more about the early days of things, because you mentioned that you were working on your own startup while also kind of working for another startup with everything. And I'm kind of in a similar boat with a lot of things myself. I wanted to ask how did you kind of, balance that time for one, and how did you kind of have the commitment and motivation to kind of stay on that for such a grind and see that through? In particular, maybe slightly prompting a bit too much, but I'm wondering if having a co-founder kind of really helped you stay on track in that regard.
Yeah, one of it is your other co-founder. You can keep each other in check. But I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's hard to balance both, especially if you have a full-time job and you're trying to do this thing on the side. And sometimes, that gets in the way of your full-time job because you're just probably care more about what you're doing than your full-time job. How did I do it? Well, I made sure to do it on off hours, first of all. If you guys are building companies while you guys are working for other companies, make sure you're using your own equipment and you're doing it off hours. Yeah, but I don't know. I think, once you think about an idea, I mean, like the motivation behind actually getting that implemented and in the hands of users, to me, that was just like a really motivating thing. Like once I get hooked in an idea, I obsess about it and I don't like stop until I complete it. And I think, yeah, always legit the localized marketplace I was talking about. I was very hooked on the idea. It took a lot of convincing by Grant, my other co-founder, to say this is not the right way to go. And then, we came up with the other idea, and then I was just like, oh my God, let's do it. But I think you really have to be motivated, and like if you question yourself of if you should be doing it, then you probably shouldn't be doing it. I think like if you know what you want to do, then do it. But if you say, oh, this is probably not something I should do, I don't have the time to do it, I wouldn't do it.
And then as follow-up and slightly less of a question, more as a call for help, how do you what do you do if you have just too many things that you want to focus on? How kind of narrow down what is the one thing that I want to spend my time on? Or
Right.
can you try to
I actually was in a similar
projects or.
Yeah, I was in a similar boat where I'd work on a bunch of things and I never finished anything. I think it's really important just to stick with one thing and finish it. And so, like I said, that goes back to my previous point of you have to be 100% bought into what you're doing. If you're gonna like multitask and try multiple things, more than likely it's not gonna work out. You have to put your entire effort on one thing. Your entire life should depend on it. And like Trenton knows this, like while Grant and I were, I mean, it's still like my life is WhatNot right now. Like we don't have fun. We don't go out with friends anymore. Like literally we work every day, all day, 7 days a week. And that is our life. And like, it's kind of funny because like people in YC, we would see people who would go to YC and like, we saw the people who aren't working all the time. And like, you should see where they are today. The people who are working like all the time and like completely invested in their company are the ones that are more successful. And so like that means you have to give up a lot of things. And yeah, I mean, it is fun. Like that's the thing. You also need to have fun and really, really enjoy like the thing that you're working on.
Yeah, seems like I got a lot to look forward to. So yeah, thanks, appreciate it.
Yeah, but I mean, I think you should continue to do it. Just make sure you pick the right thing and you're really 100% bought in.
I think somebody else was asking a question when Blake came up.
Yeah, sorry, that was me. Yeah, Logan, I just want to know what the best piece of advice you got throughout your startup journey has been so far.
Best piece of advice. Well, I actually named it. I thought that was the best advice ever. Don't launch into Pokemon. Focus on one thing. And now Pokemon is massive, like just in that category, we're doing millions a week in GMP. But like, I think, I think the best thing is one thing too, is like, don't give up. We were like the ugly ducklings in YC. So we were like, not the cool kids. We weren't the hot company. We weren't the ones who were raising monster rounds after like demo day. And I think that's okay. You just have to be very deeply focused. And, our group partners told us that. Like, I think that was the best advice. Like, don't give up, keep going. And we did do that. And now we're the most valuable company in our batch. And we're actually the most valuable company in the most recent batches. And so that being said, I think it's like our group partners were very motivating and just like, hey guys, like, fuck the VCs, fuck them. Like, continue doing what you're doing. And like, that was great advice. We didn't let that distract us.
Great, thank you.
Wrapping up, just to be respectful of your time.
It's fine. I don't have anything after this. So I'm happy to stay a little later. So.
Okay. I have a question. So, everybody either, some people might not have a co-founder. Some people might have a co-founder that might, switch roles or later on leave the team. We've experienced that with different companies. But can you kind of speak about the initial founding team, bringing on more people outside the co-founding team or finding a co-founder, just, hiring in general?
Yeah, that's probably the most important thing. I think that's probably why a lot of startups fail too, is the co-founder relationship. And so I think it's really important for, the co-founding team to be very aligned and also have like similar goals and work mentality. And so that means like, yeah, I mean, you guys are going to have disagreements with your co-founders. Like Grant and I, we fought a bunch. We still kind of do, but like you have to really figure out how do you come to a resolution quickly and move on. And I think a lot of it too is, from what I know of other companies, of why people sort of separate is like a conflict of vision or different ideas, or like one person who wants to do something and the co-founder wants to do something else. And I think that's bad. You guys really have to align with each other on what you want to build. And I'll actually tell you guys this, and Grant's the CEO, I'm the CTO. Grant makes the final decision. And you guys I think you need to have that person and like immense trust in that person. Two people can't be making a decision. Sure, you guys can have disagreements. You can have, ideas that you guys work collaboratively together, but ultimately when it comes down to like, what is the company going to do next, the CEO needs to make the final decision. And you guys have to be comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with Grant making the final decision on things that he might disagree that I want, right? And you just have to be okay with that. And like sometimes the decisions that he thinks is best for the company works out, and sometimes it doesn't. And so you just can't really have, you just can't have that. Like you need to just move on and continue focusing on what matters, which is building your business. Yeah, and like fighting about things that are silly, like, yeah, I mean, we fought, like, especially when we were building things, but it wasn't like, you just have to kind of like figure it out and move on. But yeah.
Would you say that you guys' skill sets kind of complement each other, or do you guys?
Oh, that's another thing. Yeah, in terms of finding your founder, like that's probably the most important thing. Your skill set needs to complement each other. I think Grant's skill set is really good. He doesn't have he has a tech background. He worked at a bunch of tech companies and did a bunch of things from marketing to business operations. So he really had a different sort of side that I don't really have. And I think, like, honestly, he's amazing at what he does. And so you have to have immense confidence in what that person is going to do. Yeah, he's really good. And he's actually like the right person to be in that position. If I was out fundraising, like I can't do as good of a job as him. And like, you guys have to just be comfortable with like what you can and can't do, and know your strengths and weaknesses, and know that other co-founders' strengths and weaknesses, and like leverage your guys' strengths together. And so, yeah, like if I was the one fundraising, I don't know if I know what investors would think. But and like that's another thing. Make sure if you guys are out fundraising, only one of you guys should be doing it. Towards the end, if you're like doing A and B's, you'll have to meet everyone that is giving you a check, but like there should be one person doing it, while the other person is really focused on building and like keeping the company alive.
As a technical founder, a good idea to look for other technical founders or people that are more experienced on the business side, or to kind of fill in gaps in those areas?
Yeah, so when Grant and I were launching this thing, we were actually thinking about bringing out a friend who actually ended up starting a different company that just closed their, I think is it their Series A, their seed round. And actually, when I was trying to poach him, because he was one of the best engineers I ever worked with, I was like, and he knew Grant and I pretty well. He was like, oh man, I'm starting this new thing and I don't want to like let my other co-founders down. And so, yeah, I think he made the wrong decision, but I'm actually fortunate because I don't have to give up much equity. We don't have to give any more equity now, and it's so valuable. But it's like, yeah, I think if I were to go back, it's important. I think a good founding team is between 2 and 3 people. You probably don't want more than that. I know that there are solo founders that like pull it off. It's really, really hard to be a solo founder. And actually, that's when someone asks how to get into YC, that is one thing that they look at. If you are a solo founder, they will judge you quite a bit more. There are a couple people who do make it through, but it is tremendously difficult to start a company by yourself.
Sure.
So a lot of our companies are at a stage where they maybe have a couple of users or some amount of revenue. What would you do when you're at a stage where you feel like you don't have product market fit, but you have like some traction, like maybe a little bit of traction? What would you be focusing your time on?
Getting the product market fit. So even if you have a few users and you have some traction, maybe a little bit of revenue, you should just double down on product market fit. I think everyone has their own definition of product market fit, actually. And it's kind of funny, Trenton's on this call, because we thought we had product market fit right after YC. And actually, I don't think we did, even though our growth was like this, and by the end of YC, we were doing like $60,000 in GMV. Like that should allow us to raise a seed round. Now that I think about it, I don't think that was product market fit. What product market fit to me is when shit's starting to break and you can't manage your business anymore because shit's on fire all the time. Because like people are using your app and like there's fire after fucking fire after fire. And so I think, there's a lot of different definitions of product market fit, and you can read that out. And it is a really challenging thing to like think like, do I have product market fit or do I not? I think when you have it, you'll absolutely know it. At that point, we were like questioning, do we have product market fit? We think we do. We don't know if we do. And we definitely did not.
So would you say to try and find out and kind of navigate that landscape, would you maybe put different types of customers in different buckets and start to understand who uses it the most, or who brings the largest market or their highest amount of revenue? Like, what would you say is your process behind trying to navigate the existing customer base and doubling down on one specific market?
So like how did we know we should go expand into another market?
Yeah, so like let's say you didn't take the route where you just launched with that deep narrow market, right? And let's say you had a whole bunch of different customers in a whole bunch of different industries, right? How would you try and find your product market fit starting there?
I would pick one industry.
You just randomly select one, or would you?
Yeah, I mean, I would do a lot of research on each industry, and like this kind of goes back to if you do fundraise. There's actually a lot of companies that never fundraise, and they're fucking great. I have a lot of respect for them, and they're massive. But if you do want to go down like the fundraising venture capital route, like you have to show that there's a huge market, and so I would look at each of those industries and really just pick one that you're excited about, and pick one that there's a massive opportunity that you can disrupt that market in. And so I don't know if that answers the question. It always goes down to pick one. And start small too. Like there's no reason to start big. Because you will get big. Once you start small and you make that thing work, it's just gonna work from there on. So
all right. Anybody else have a last minute question before we wrap it up?
Yeah, how'd you guys come up with the whole entire eBay listings idea? The fake listings?
Yeah, bootstrapping listings. How did we come up with it? I don't remember, to be honest. We're like, we need inventory. How do we get inventory? Well, eBay has a bunch of data. We could probably create a market price for every single SKU or product by scraping all of eBay's data. And then we could just pretend that we have the inventory so people can go to our app and then like literally buy it. And actually when people would buy it, there would be some times where we would actually lose money on it because we couldn't find something that was like that price on eBay. It was a really interesting thing. But yeah, it really allowed us to validate what we were doing in a very like clean and hacky way. Yeah, if you can bootstrap supply, that's a good thing.
Love it.
So
to clarify,
go for it.
So to clarify, you actually found listings on eBay, listed it on your app, and when someone actually purchased it on your app, you would purchase it for them on eBay?
So no, what we did was for Funko Pops, I don't know, at the time there was like 10,000 Funko Pops. And so we had a database of every single Funko Pop. And so for every Funko Pop, we created a market price because we would look at sales data of eBay. And so we would estimate what like this thing is actually selling for. And it was something that was always running and scraping data and like determining like what a price would be for a particular product. And so if we had a high confidence that this product was probably available on eBay and it would probably go for this price, we would create a listing for it. And this is all automated. I think we built that like in a few days. And if it wasn't on eBay, we would look at Mercari or other things, but like someone would purchase it for the market price. Huh?
Oh, no, that was just some background noise. My bad.
Oh, no worries. Someone would purchase it for whatever price we thought the market price was. And then we would actually have a workflow where every morning Grant would actually look at our orders, and then he would actually go out in an Excel sheet and say, okay, I need to source this product. And we would try to find like a particular, like we would try not to lose money and also like give a good condition. And so then you would buy it on eBay, it would come to us, and then we would ship it to the buyer, and people liked it. So people didn't know though. But that's honestly how we got it off the ground.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's really smart.
But if you can do that, like just thinking about the community, like people, these like collectors love to collect things and buy things. And so if you're able to like get that inventory and then also get them to the app so they can see that inventory, and like how do you get to them in the app? And that's the hurdle. Is like you have to have some pretty like interesting growth hacks. And so that's where this concept of the drop, which was like this weekly giveaway where you had to go on the app and you had to share a link, and like people could share codes and redeem codes for more points. That was it was a really good effect. Or yeah, that was a really good strategy. It worked.
Nice. Yeah.
All right, we're gonna wrap it up there, guys. Thank you so much, Logan, for your time. I did want to ask you, how can we help you? I know you're hiring a lot right now. Maybe we can share on LinkedIn. There's a lot of us here. If we're able to share about some of the roles that you're hiring for, or something about the company.
Yeah, so the biggest thing we're trying to hire is really good engineers. That I would say is the biggest gap, and you guys will find that out. I don't know if anyone here is also hiring right now with all the influx in venture capital, and the market is crazy for engineers. It's like no one has seen a market like this ever. Salaries are increasing exponentially. And it's just a really interesting time. But I think, finding really, really good software engineers, and our hiring bar is pretty high. And so, someone who goes through our interview process, it's like probably an 80 to 90% chance that they don't get an offer. And I think it speaks to like, we really want to work with great people, and we have a very high hiring bar, because if the moment that you get someone in that's like a bad culture fit or bad at their job, it's just like, it creates this kind of negative effect across the company. And you really, like, especially at our stage, like have to hire the right people. But yeah, if you share our jobs page out, that would be great. And then also, any of you guys are on this call, feel free, if you guys have questions or anything, email me at logan@whatnot.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Logan. Love this. Love hearing your story. A lot of great lessons that you shared. I'm sure everybody here got a lot of value out of it. So thank you so much.
I hope you guys, don't give up. Like sometimes, like also we're like pretty fortunate to be in the position we are in today. I would actually say if we were in the same position that we were like a year ago, where we hadn't raised any money, and today, we still we would not have given up. We would have kept going. And so just like keep going, don't give up. And it'll be fucking rough. Like starting a company is, as you guys probably know, it's fucking hard. And it doesn't stop getting hard. Like right now, it's actually even harder than it was when we were getting started. Because this whole company building shit is very, very hard. So yeah, don't give up.